Okay, I want to talk a little bit about ratios. And before we jump in, I'm going to do some comparisons between the straight up fractions and ratios, just to give you a few examples to think about to help you maybe better understand what a ratio is. So let's start off with an example first. Let's say that I've got a pizza and I ate 1/4 of the pizza. So I'm going to cut this pizza into 4 equal parts, and we'll say that I ate that piece. So 1/4 of a pizza was eaten. Okay, now this represents a fraction of the whole pizza. 1/4 was eaten. We're just looking at the one pizza. Now, let's talk about, say you're at a bake sale, and for every one cake that was sold, so here's a cake, 4 pies were also sold. So here's my 4 pies. So we've got 1 cake and 4 pies. So this one here, even though it looks like a fraction, 1/4, just like this one over here, because we're comparing 2 things, 2 items, or 2 values, we're going to call this a ratio. So basically a ratio is when you're comparing 2 items, and it looks like a ratio, or excuse me, it looks like a fraction. Okay, so it has, a numerator and a denominator. Okay, let's look at a couple more examples just to give you a sense of the difference. And if you think you have it, you could skip over this next section. I just want to add a couple more examples. So again, a fraction and a ratio. Let's say 9/10 of the students completed homework. So I'll put homework in here. Okay, homework. And a ratio, let's say that in a class there were 4 females, and in that same class there were 3 males. Okay, so again, this is a ratio because we are looking at 2 values. The values are classified in some way. In this case, this is just a straight up fraction because we're just looking at the number of students that completed their homework. All right, now ratios can be written a couple of different ways. So let's first look at, my notes are all messed up here. Let's look at the different ways to write a ratio, or maybe you might see them written in different ways. So one way is to use the word to. Okay, so say we have 5 girls to 6 boys, 5 to 6. Well, we could also use a colon. Okay, that's a colon. So you could write it as 5:6. And then the last way is with a fraction. And we just kind of did a few examples. So it would look like a fraction, but we know it's a ratio because we're comparing 2 items. This is going to be girls. This is going to be boys. Okay. Now, like a fraction, we are always going to reduce to lowest terms. So for instance, we could use this a similar one here. Say we've got 25 girls to 30 boys. Okay. Now we can reduce this. 25 and 30 have a common factor of 5. That's the greatest common factor. We're going to divide each, and so we're going to get 5/6. Okay? And so again, it's going to be 5 girls for every 6 boys in, someone's class. Now, there's a couple of other things you want to keep in mind. In this case, we reduced to lowest terms. Okay, so we want to reduce or simplify. That's the proper term. But we do not want to convert an improper fraction, or what looks to be an improper fraction, to either a mixed number or a whole number. And so let me give you an example. Say we have 15 students out of 10 classes. Okay, so again, we're going to reduce first. I know 5 goes into each, so that's going to give me 3 students and 2 classes. So 3 students compared to 2 classes. And, these students might be going on a field trip. Anyway, notice this looks like an improper fraction, and you are correct to say that's improper, but when we're dealing with ratios, we're not going to convert this to 1 1/2. Because when you convert 3 halves to 1 1/2, you're losing, you don't really know what this 1 stands for, and so it kind of loses its values. What represents the students, what represents the classes. So we don't want to do that when dealing with ratios. Okay. Another example, say we've got 20 cats to 10 dogs in a pet shop. We're going to reduce. We can divide both by 10, and so that's going to give us 2 cats for every 1 dog. Now, again, we don't want to convert that to 2, because with fractions, I would always say convert, this would be improper, convert either to a mixed number or a whole number. This would be equivalent to 2, which is correct when we're dealing with fractions. But notice when I change this, if this is a ratio and I convert it to 2, I've lost one of my values. I'm now only saying 2 cats. I've thrown out the dogs. And so when you say 2 cats, that doesn't, it's lost some of its meaning. So you don't want to convert to a mixed number or an improper fraction when dealing with ratios. Okay, now there are a few other things I want to talk about. Oh, here it is. So there's 2 kinds of ratios that we're going to see. 2 kinds of ratios. One is the part-to-part ratio, and we've been kind of looking at these already. Ratio already. Oh gosh. Okay. So an example would be, say you've got a pet shop and there are 18 cats for every 8 dogs. Okay, so the pet shop, okay, so in the pet shop, let's put it up here, pet shop, The pet shop is the whole, okay? And these, the cats and the dogs, they make up the parts of the pet shop, or the inhabitants. So when you have 18 cats to 8 dogs, which is really 9 cats to 4 dogs, I'll just use initials there, that's the reduced ratio. But again, we're just focusing on the parts of the pet shop. We're not comparing a part to the total amount of animals in the pet shop. Another example, say you've got a fruit bowl on your counter, and you have, say, 5 bananas, and you have 7 apples, okay? So again, we're talking about the parts here. We're not talking about the total number of fruit in the fruit bowl. So the other kind of ratio that you'll see is when you are comparing a part to the whole amount. And so in that example, if we use some of the examples we just did, say we've got 18 cats, compared to a total of 26 total animals. Okay, so, you know, the remainder could be dogs, or maybe there's a couple of turtles in the pet shop, or parrots. You know, you don't know. We're just saying that the total amount is 26, but we know cats are 18. And of course, we can reduce that. We can divide by 2, and we get 9 cats and 13 for total. All right, let's do one more part whole using the fruit example. So let's say the fruit bowl has, I'm just going to make up a number here, how about 3 oranges, oops, and the total fruit would be 10. So 10 total items. You know, again, you might have bananas, you might have some apples, but we're comparing 3 oranges to the total number of items in the fruit bowl.